think back in the fall, no, late summer, I said something to the effect of, I'm ready for fall.
Mm-hmm. You're always ready for fall.
And I'm ready for seasons a couple months before they happen.
Yeah.
I'm ready for spring.
Yeah.
But I feel it.
Do you?
Feel like it's coming. Like this is the climax.
Of winter?
Of winter's coming. And then spring comes out. Spring
I hope so.
is winter's jizz.
Wow.
And it just comes out.
Okay.
To all you new listeners out there.
Welcome.
Welcome to While She's Napping. I am Adam.
And I'm Cindy.
If you think about it, that makes total sense, right? You're, before you climax, it feels like spring when you do.
Sure. Okay.
It's a good feeling.
Yeah.
And who doesn't like spring, save for those that have bad allergies?
Sure.
But even them, they probably still like spring.
Yeah.
Compared to winter, assuming you're in the Northeast or a place that does have winter.
Yeah.
Probably if you're on the West Coast and you don't have a hardcore winter,
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, especially now this week, we still have snow from last week. We're getting another 8 inches today. And then we have snow in the forecast every other day for the next 10 days.
Yeah.
So hopefully this is the climax.
This is the climax.
Yeah.
This is the buildup.
Yeah.
And then spring comes.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. What in Rhode Island it's weird, and especially just because Groundhog's Day happened. Mm-hmm. Has there ever been a time, first of all, when there hasn't been more winter?
Not that I can remember.
Has there ever been a time when they said, "Oh, fuck First of all, when I was a kid, I thought this was real.
Yeah.
I thought there was a legit, a designated groundhog, and there's a crowd of people around the groundhog hole, and a groundhog comes up, checks out his shadow, can't see it, and then goes back.
Well,
so if he does see it, it's
6 more weeks.
Oh, so because he's scared shitless, and he's like, I gotta go back to my house.
I mean, because of the time of day of when there is an actual groundhog, and there is a ceremonial thing.
No, I was convinced that this is how the weather worked.
Oh, okay.
If a groundhog saw his shadow,
right?
When I was a kid,
that's what determined it.
I came home and I said, "Dad, did he see his shadow?" And every year, yeah, fuck.
Well, because every year there's a shadow because that's, science.
No. But when you're a kid, you don't know about
I know.
where the sun is.
Right.
I just legit thought the groundhog determined the climate.
That was the magic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was, please don't fucking see your shadow today.
But he always does.
He always does. That's what I'm saying. So when is there ever a time? Why do we even do it?
I don't know. I don't know the background of it or where it came from.
Jesus.
I'm sure there's a fun origin story.
Well, yeah. Apparently it just happened. And somewhere along the way, Groundhog's Day, probably because of the movie, became, akin to things being repetitive.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
How?
Because
of 6 more weeks of winter?
I guess.
It's the same shit for 6 weeks?
I guess. That makes sense, yeah.
Well, this time the groundhog didn't fail us, especially in the Northeast, because we're getting a lot of snow.
Yep.
For a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But spring is coming. Anyways, welcome to the show. You're probably here because you are very much interested in this QAnon cult, and I'm just going to call it for what it is. It is a cult. If you are listening to us for the first time, we welcome you to the show, and we hope you enjoy the episode. I would encourage you first, though, to dig into the archives. We did, I guess you could say, an introductory or preliminary episode on QAnon.
It was part of our election series we did back in October.
Fall. There you go. So you can dig back into the archives. I encourage you to listen to that first to sort of get a baseline on where we stand on QAnon. And then you can revisit this episode if you so choose, or if you want to listen to this first and have the other episode act as sort of a prequel, as they do in theater. The before stuff, you always watch that after for some reason. please, we encourage you to do so. And while you're here, you might as well subscribe to the show. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. If you guys are still using Pandora, we're on Pandora. We're on the YouTubes, no video, just audio if that's how you stream your podcast. We're there. Anywhere you get your audio from, we are there. Just search for us. Just search While She's Napping. I'm sure we're there. If we're not, contact us and we'll be sure to get there. I think we're on Amazon's podcast service, whatever that is.
I don't even know.
I think Audible does podcasts now.
I didn't know
And
that.
it's not just books. I don't fucking know. Anyways, subscribe to the show. And if you are listening to us on Apple Podcasts, please take the time to give us 5 stars and a quick review. That being said, we already had another 5-star rating this week. We appreciate that. We do keep track of those things, even though I say this now every week. The ratings and reviews don't help juice the algorithms for the Apple Podcast machine. Doesn't do anything but make you look cool, and we want to look cool because we are parents, so by definition, we are not cool.
I mean, we were not cool before we became parents. Now we're really not cool.
But we were passable.
Sometimes.
We got invited to at least one party a year.
Sure.
So,
and we came home at like 11.
No. Before we had kids?
Yeah.
Before we had a child?
Right. I mean, I guess. I mean, depends how far back you go. I think once we got into our, after we got married.
At 10.
When we were I'm talking like college days, yeah, early 20s. But I think since we were married, even before we had our kid, we were kind of lame.
Well, we got our own house.
Right.
And when you get a new house, you don't want to leave it.
Right.
And then when you have a child, you want to leave all the time.
Yeah, but you can't. Especially during a pandemic.
I'll get those groceries. We don't need it. I'll go get it.
Yeah, no, really, yeah.
But we don't need anything. You
never know.
We need grease.
Yeah.
For what?
My trips to Target, even for online pickup, are an adventure.
Are we out of pork rinds? We never had those. Yeah, we're out. Got to go get them.
Yep.
Anyways, I mentioned you can contact us if we are not on your podcatcher. We have numerous ways you can contact us. Why don't you take it away?
We're on Facebook at facebook.com/whileshe'snapping, on Instagram at whileshe'snapping, or on Twitter at she'snappingpod, or you can email us at whileshe'snapping@gmail.com.
Yeah, so QAnon. Let's get right to it. So, I think we, as a society, as an American society, as American citizens, this is the first time this being a cult-like group of people has ever really, from my recollection at least, infiltrated a political party. Now, atheists out there can say that Christianity has infiltrated the Republican Party for ages. I get it, but I don't really regard religion like Christianity as a cult. It's arguable, but it's so historic, and it's been ongoing since, basically the modern history.
Yeah.
That we can just sort of put that aside. I'm talking something, even though on paper Christianity does seem a little bit outlandish, I'm talking stuff that just doesn't make sense.
Right. And I think part of the distinction might be that with QAnon and other cults too, it's sort of it's like a real-time adaptation of their beliefs based on their reality. So like when something doesn't come to pass, they just come up with a new thing.
They move the goalposts.
Right. And it's like their story or their beliefs are being formulated around other things that are happening in order to move their narrative forward.
Right.
Versus, like you said, with Christianity, it's long-standing, the core beliefs and the scripture, the Bible is...
Yeah, but
has
the
been
interpretations sort of
course,
morph.
but I'm saying the core beliefs and the core documents and history and language associated with Christianity has been around from the beginning of it. And there's not a constant changing of the narrative to make it fit something else.
I mean, it depends on what branch of Christianity we were talking about.
Oh,
but
sure,
I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But I do think it's sort of dangerous because we regard cults as sort of this own pocket of people in society, and it's typically rather small, right? So you have people like we just watched the documentary on HBO about Heaven's Gate. I've known about that for quite a while, so I think this was your introduction to Heaven's Gate, that documentary.
No, I mean, I've heard about it before. I've always been kind of fascinated by cults, and I've watched various documentaries and listened to other podcasts about it, but this was definitely the deepest dive that I've seen.
Then there's was it the Nexium cult?
Yep.
You got cults like, I don't know,
Scientology.
Scientology, you can
Jonestown.
say. Yeah, you can say Westboro Baptist Church is sort of cultish. That definitely skeets towards the cult rather than the religion, the doctrine.
Mm-hmm.
You can say stuff like Charles Manson's people or whatever. But my point is that those types of pockets of people are rather small in comparison. Now QAnon, because it's such a perfect storm of everything that's happened, has infiltrated your neighbor. Right. And they're not just people. I guess the difference between the aforementioned cults and QAnon is that those cults had their own sector, right? They would cultivate in their own like private areas.
To some extent, I think there's a huge variable there, which is technology and social media.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So, but I do think there is some level of, people coming from all different walks of life. Like anyone is vulnerable to falling into a cult, depending on their situation. But it's like by chance that they get introduced to it, or someone they know who's been involved introduces it to them. So it's,
I don't know that's true.
It's definitely, I mean, it's part of.
But I don't know something as ridiculous as this. Anybody can buy into.
It's not anybody. I'm saying, I guess what I mean is, we've talked before about, I think we've made the assumption that most people who fall into QAnon tend to be uneducated.
I think that's a fair assumption.
Apparently it's not.
We're not talking about if there are any educated people. I'm saying the vast majority of them are not.
Maybe. I'm just saying I think there's more information becoming available that shows that really there's not that much of a common denominator other than they're at a vulnerable point. They're looking for community and
they're Trump supporters.
Sure, I guess that's a huge baseline of commonality. But
we've also discussed that the majority of Trump supporters, this is not an insult, this is based on voting data, are uneducated across the country. The vast majority of uneducated people, in terms of a college degree, voted for Trump. That's measurable.
Yeah, I know. It's like a demographic statistic.
And I know that doesn't mean X equals Y. I'm just saying you can carry over from that.
Sure, but what I'm saying is, you're right. There probably is a majority there based just like, again, demographic data, not talking about people's intelligence level or saying they're stupid.
I'm saying
just like
those that have a college degree.
Right, like literally have obtained a higher level of education.
Yes.
But I think there's just a whole nother group or type of supporter who is highly educated and is wealthy.
Of course.
Right. And so they are just as likely, I think, I'm not 100% sure. I'm saying I think that they are also likely to fall into QAnon even though they're educated.
I'm not saying it's impossible. Right. I'm saying the likelihood of an educated person falling into QAnon, I think, is less than someone that's uneducated. Because of the rabbit hole, you have to dig yourself down. And if you have any background in research and analyzing anything in a very, deductive way, you'll say, wait a minute, this is going in several different directions here.
I see that. I guess I'm saying I wonder, I don't know the answer to this. I wonder how powerful the psychology of things that draw people into cults is versus that logical, like, in your logical brain that this maybe isn't a valid source of information, but you want to believe it so bad that you let yourself.
I think it's just the scavenger hunt of it all.
Yeah.
Right. Trying to
It's
decipher.
entertaining and you feel like you're privy to something that other people don't know.
Have you ever heard of, I think it was called Cicada, the internet scavenger hunt? There was this thing on, I don't know if it was originated from Reddit or the dark net, and I think it's called Cicada. Cicada and a bunch of numbers. Anyways, there was this random, I don't know, drop. I think on Reddit or maybe 4chan or something. And it was like an internet scavenger hunt. And apparently, as far as I know, it hasn't been solved, but it drove a lot of people to try to figure out what it is. Anyway, my point in...
Cicada 3301.
That sounds about right. My point in referencing that is people love a mystery. People love a scavenger hunt. And I think when it comes to QAnon, when you not only have the scavenger hunt aspect to it, you're also feeding into the already divisive political nature of the two parties right now, right? And that feeds into anti-democrat sort of narratives, people's disdain and disgust and dislike of Nancy Pelosi for prima facie reasons that aren't necessarily valid. If you feed into that, people will sort of gravitate towards that because now, all right, so here in Rhode Island, former governor Gina Raimondo, people just didn't like her. And anytime I asked, why don't you like this person? What about her policy do you not like? They'd say, I just don't like her. And I feel that's the same way with Nancy Pelosi. Like, what don't you like about Nancy Pelosi? Oh, I just don't like her. Now they have a reason. QAnon gave them a reason
That's
to
what
not
That's
like
what I
them.
was saying earlier about the narrative changes or the story or the beliefs they mold around what they want to believe. And it creates explanation or creates reason, just like you're saying.
I don't want to go too far down here. The reason why this is so fascinating to me is that you're right when it comes to educated people or those in higher positions, because I don't know if you have to necessarily be educated to be part of Congress now. I don't know if Marjorie Taylor Greene is educated. I don't really know her background. Fine.
But I'm not sure either.
My point is it's infiltrated the powers that be in a way. And it's just a small number now. I think maybe one or two, definitely less than 10 people are outward supporters of QAnon or believers of QAnon in Congress. I know there was I think an anonymous poll that said about or approximately 20 to 40 something % of those think that there's something to QAnon.
Yeah, I saw there was a recent poll in December from NPR that
I'm not talking citizens. I'm talking members of Congress.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think there was a fairly decent, I'll put it this way. There was a decent percentage of Congress that wasn't dismissive of QAnon. They didn't brush it off as nonsense.
Yes, and I was going to say that's very similar to the pattern that they've seen in the general public. And it's just interesting to me that I wonder if Congress is afraid to say, these members of Congress are afraid to totally dismiss it because there's polling data that shows that actually more than half the country is open to these theories.
This was an anonymous poll, right?
Yeah.
So if you were honest, which you could have been, and said, yes, I believe in QAnon, they wouldn't have known who said this.
Right.
In Congress. It's all anonymous, right? And maybe that data could have leaked out and you're forward thinking and didn't want it to. But just the fact that there are members of Congress that aren't dismissing it is alarming enough, right? And I don't know if Marjorie Taylor Greene is part of that now, because on surface today, she does walk back a lot of QAnon stuff that she has said in the past. She has, from what I'm reading, she's not as a devout QAnoner now. And I don't know it's because she's a member of Congress and she has to put up a front, but she has sort of said that was my old life, or I don't necessarily believe in Q anymore, but she still is a hardcore Trump supporter. So those two things don't necessarily mean the same, right? Not all Trump supporters are QAnons,
of course,
but all QAnons are Trump supporters.
Yes. But I think from my understanding of her background, she's a long time, like maybe lifelong in terms of her adulthood, conspiracy theorist.
Yes.
Like 9/11,
yes.
Sandy Hook, all of that.
Yes. Well, Look, the reason why I want to bring this up is, now that the election is over, after the January 6th insurrection and after the inauguration, what is next for QAnon, right? And we've referenced this at the top. They're constantly moving the goalposts. And I think right now it's either March 4th or March 6th is their new, Trump will be declared president. And, when you've invested so much time into a cult and you have level-headed people around you calling it for what it is, bullshit, and you dismiss them and you sort of remove them from your life, or vice versa, they've removed you, or both, what are you left with now? Now that Biden is in, I cannot tell you, go to reddit.com/r/QAnon casualties. How many people did not know what to do noon on January the 20th?
Yeah.
They did not know what to do.
I know. I heard, I was listening to another podcast that was talking about this and how the narrative throughout that day changed on all the QAnon boards and chats and stuff. And people were just, dropping like flies as time went on. It was this total shift in that morning. They were all so amped up and excited, and this was the day they'd been waiting for.
They were convinced Biden was going to get arrested.
Yeah.
Right then and there.
And when that didn't happen, and as the day progressed, and as he was sworn in, and nothing, you could, the whole atmosphere of those conversations changed. And there were some people who were saying, hold out hope. It's all going to be okay. Like, keep the faith. Sort of thing. And then other people who were just like, I feel like I've been totally taken for a ride. Like, and they realized that it was just all bullshit.
Yeah. And
like, it's just two total extreme different reactions.
But I don't know that the majority of them are still with the it's bullshit train. Even if you jumped off, you've abandoned everyone else in your life. I shouldn't say everyone. You've abandoned a good portion of people in your life, because there's going to be dichotomies in your life. There are going to be people that disagree with such nonsense, and I would like to think that the majority of people in your life, if you are a QAnon person, have dismissed that as bullshit.
Yeah.
I would like to believe that.
Sorry. Yeah. After the insurrection on the 6th, to the listener, if you've listened to our first episode, I recapped a conversation I had with someone that I know, an acquaintance.
QAnon episode.
Is that what I said?
You said first episode.
Oh, sorry. Yes, our first episode covering QAnon. I had a conversation with an acquaintance of mine who has a family member who follows Q, and tried to get a sense of what that's been like for her. And I followed up with her after the insurrection on the 6th, and things have only gotten worse with her relationship with this person. And actually, they hadn't spoken in over a month, I think, and they were very, very close. And she just said it's been so hard on her family, the division, and they just can't find common ground on anything anymore.
It's sad.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad because you've had this group of people that have invested everything, right? And a lot of them don't have jobs, and it's not because they were QAnon. It's largely because of the pandemic. They don't have jobs. They have a lot of free time on their hand. They're just living in a state of disarray because things are so quote unquote abnormal as they are. So I guess in that regard, maybe it's easier to gravitate towards something so outlandish. But it's sad because their whole vested interest politically, personally, spiritually has been in this movement, and it didn't deliver. So much so that, like, here's a clip. This is legit as far as I know. I hope it's legit and I'm not playing something that ended up being a troll job, but it's been, passed around on the Twitter sphere and Parler Watch on Reddit and QAnon casualties as legitimate. So this is a woman that found out that Biden was sworn in, watched it, and didn't know what to do.
President Trump, if you see this, please save us. I don't even see our American flag anymore. Biden's talking with some kind of crazy flag. This is America. This is our land. Please, President Trump. Please, please, I hope you have a plan. God, please save us. Save us from the devil, please. Y'all, I'm about to have a panic attack. This is our country. Our country. This is awful. God, please save us, please.
Like, how do you respond to that? You know, she's saying, first of all, I feel bad for this person.
I was going to say,
me,
that's
this
like,
isn't even funny.
That's like heartbreaking to listen to someone who's been so disillusioned that she's that terrified.
Yeah, and it's not like Biden has said anything threatening. Like, when you look at the polarities of everything, right, you go back to 2016 and fast forward to 2020. You have President-elect, or at that point, candidate Trump, saying terrible things, objectively terrible things that would frighten someone. I'm not saying necessarily that we were maybe at the time, you know, the over embellishment or the overreaction to, oh, definitely going to be World War III. In hindsight, it's kind of silly, right? You have checks and balances, but at the time he was saying things about deporting people. He was saying things about, you know, taxes and whatnot. It was scary for people's way of life because it was going to be shaken up one way or another. Especially for people of color, especially for people that were, you know, have immigrated here. It was a scary situation. I know a lot of Republicans or a lot of MAGA people don't care about that. But I would like to think that there is at least a concept, it's conceptual to them, that they can say, okay, if I was an illegal immigrant at the time, I can understand why it would be scary for Donald Trump to be here. Maybe you embrace that fear. Maybe you're like, yeah, fuck yeah, get him out. I'm not one of those people. But at least you can say, yes, I can see why it's scary for that person. What has Biden done that could possibly be scary for MAGA people?
First, there's the buzzword of socialism.
But
that's been demonized. I know, but
what has he said? We have things that are tangible, recorded things that candidate Trump has said.
I know.
What recorded things that they could possibly use has candidate Biden said?
It doesn't matter, because the whole point of this is that they think they're privy to information that other people don't have, that there's this cabal of pedophiles. That's what she says, save us from the devil. She's not talking just about Biden. She's talking about this cabal that is the basis of QAnon, that it represents Satan. Like, it's much bigger than just a candidate saying terrible things or saying racist things, or like, they think that there's something so dark happening, and it means the end of our government and our country as we know it.
But it's been almost,
I know, it's not based in reality. That's the whole point, though. I'm saying you can't.
Yeah, but they're gonna love that $1,400 check in their pocket. I'm serious.
I know.
And they'll end up spending it.
I know.
You know, or if and when pot is legalized federally.
I know.
What are we doing? Like, that is more frightening to me. It's frightening to me, not for my own personal safety or even in terms of a civil war. Individuals acting like that, and maybe that's just the very small portion of QAnon. I hope it is, right? I hope the majority of QAnon doesn't feel that way or didn't feel that way.
Right. I'm curious to know what, like I said, there was obviously a split, and there were people on both ends of the spectrum who felt differently, who jumped ship after the inauguration, and others who doubled down or, like you said, created a new goalpost. And I don't know what that split looks like.
To me, there's a level of legitimate insanity. And I don't mean that in jest. I mean that as legitimate and, I guess, scientific or medically as possible when you say, I don't recognize this flag. Maybe she's saying metaphorically.
Yeah, what was that about?
But
she said it wasn't a real American flag?
She said, I don't know what would recognize that flag. It's an American flag. What are you seeing? And maybe she meant that metaphorically. Like, I don't
Right.
recognize this as being
Right, this doesn't
reflective of
represent-
America for me.
Sure.
But still, what is it? When I say to someone, what is it that Biden has been doing, much like the example about our former governor or Nancy Pelosi, what about Biden today?
I think it's the...
Do you still have your guns? I think you do.
Right. No, I think it's the narrative about all... That's the thing. You're trying to point to actual realistic, like, things that he's done and said that we have evidence of that's been recorded. I'm saying I don't think those are the things that get them riled up. It's the false narratives and the manipulated narratives that they use to fit their beliefs. Like, there's this false narrative of Biden being a pedophile, and there's like a couple of pictures or a couple of clips that float around out there that are shown out of context, that people latch onto and say, oh, see, here he is sniffing a little girl's hair. Obviously he's a pedophile. He's part of the cabal. Like, that's all it takes.
It's ridiculous to me because, you know, their boy Trump, there's pictures of him with Epstein, and their, you know, manipulation of that is, oh, he was infiltrating that from the start, trying to save the kids.
Yeah, what about him talking about how he would fuck his daughter?
Yeah.
Like,
in fairness, he said date her. He didn't say fuck
okay.
her. I'm just saying,
okay, fair enough.
Let's be accurate. That's
sure.
all.
Fair enough. He's made other comments, though, that are very sexual about his own children.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think that when you have these beliefs that aren't based in reality, there's no way to pull them out, right? And they're always waiting for the storm, right? That's the big day, the storm. The storm is coming. It's coming. And I guess January 6th was the storm. But what has been accomplished? And now that first of all, they're so fucking stupid that they recorded almost everything in that insurrection. They recorded themselves doing it, waving at people with cameras and not shying away from it, right? Which makes me believe that what they were doing, they believed was the right thing to do. Or if they thought it was bad, Trump would save them.
That's what I was going to say.
And pardon them.
That they think they're invincible because they think they have this huge, powerful movement behind them, or this powerful person, being Q or Trump, and, you know, the whole QAnon community, which supposedly is made up of some very higher up people in the government.
And now they're on no-fly lists because it's legitimate domestic terrorism, right? Yeah. And they're crying about it. They think it's unfair.
I know. I want to walk back your term, or you're using the word stupid, because I feel like
no,
that's a stupid thing to do.
It was a stupid thing to do.
Sure, but I think it's all based in how they've been manipulated to think these things, to think that they're invincible, or to think that they have the president or the former president behind them. Like, I don't think that's stupidity. I just think they are so far into it. Just like anyone else who's in a cult, they operate on a completely different level. Like
they went home thinking they have accomplished something.
Right.
And literally that night, it was business as usual in Congress.
Yep.
Nothing changed except for maybe Mitch McConnell being a little bit more aggressive in his vernacular about denying the results of the election is very dangerous, which, shout out to Mitch, but still you're a bitch. But like,
bare minimum here. I mean,
yeah. I mean, like, I'm glad the leader of the Republican Party
finally
in Congress said something, right? I don't know. We can take a break here, but to me, and we can get to how we can pull, but maybe the movement will fade, hopefully, after the break. But to me, this had to be a wake-up call. It had to be.
For some people within QAnon?
Even if we're going to wait till March 6th or whatever the date is. What they're using that because I think I mentioned this on our previous episode. It was the original inauguration date or whatever. Okay, what could possibly be after that?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. We'll take a break here. When we come back, I do want to touch on the Marjorie Taylor Greene and more to your point about that, the poll of people. All right, hang tight.
QAnon. That's what. Q-fucking-anon. I don't need to explain anything. I'm just going to read you something that should make any rational person run away in flames because this is off-the-charts wacko shit. What I'm about to read you was posted on January 13th, 1 week before the inauguration. Here it is, word for word. It's short. So just hang in there for 30 seconds, okay? Here we go. Joe Biden has been arrested. The deep state is in disarray and has struck a deal with the Trump administration. There will be an experimental surgery that will exchange the faces of Biden and Trump. Hold on. This isn't even the insane part. Oh, it gets better. You ready? Here we go. So when you watch Biden's inauguration, you will really be watching Trump being sworn in for a second term. And when you are watching the Trump trials, that is really Biden paying for his crimes. Also, when Trump, as Biden, stammers or slurs his words, that's because Trump is still learning to duplicate his speech patterns. Now, what I just read, which was a social media post by QAnon, actually isn't the thing that disturbs me. Crazy people are crazy people. They've been around forever. You know what disturbs me? The fucking completely insane and stupid people who could actually believe something like this for 1 second. Has a certain portion of our society become so tainted and weak and desperate and delusional that they could actually believe something like this? There are people who believe that Trump and Biden have reached an agreement to swap faces surgically so Trump can be president and Biden can be tried for his crimes. I don't even know where to begin with something like this. I mean, holy fucking shit almighty.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, seriously.
So hold on, wait. When he says,
shout out to Vic DiBitetto. I'm probably saying he's famous.
okay, yeah, his voice sounds familiar.
Yeah. But shout out to him. That was
that was good.
It was gold.
So when he says this was a post by QAnon on January 13th,
I don't know if it was actually a Q drop or someone.
Okay, because I read that Q actually hasn't posted since December 8th.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, so I wonder where that came from.
So maybe he from QAnon,
a QAnon community
or
group. Yeah.
Again, to me, I could picture my younger self when I was in high school or just out of high school being a troll, hopping onto some board of crazy people and posting that.
That's what I was getting at. Yeah.
But people are believing it.
I know.
And look, again, I don't want to make fun of people that obviously have some severe psychological issues, but he's, with the comedy and the grand gender aside, he is right to say that is fucking concerning that they pulled a face off John Travolta and Nick Cage. And this is happening.
I know.
And to deal with Biden's stutter issue,
right,
we make it so, it's just Trump trying to learn his speech.
That's what I was trying to describe earlier, of the narrative constantly changing just to fit that belief, to fit the square peg into the round hole. They just come up with something to constantly explain other things away when it doesn't jive with what they previously predicted or what they said was going to happen. That's a perfect example.
Again, I don't want to, this is divisive in this point that I'm going to make, but I don't care what you think of liberals. I don't care what you think of people that are Democrats. I don't care what you think of people that are lean left. You can say they overreact to a lot of Trump's, comments. And I can see that in a way. I can see why some things he says that there are a lot of people on the extreme left that are like, oh God, and they get all upset. And I get it. I don't necessarily agree with what Trump says. I'm just saying I get that sometimes people on the left tend to overreact when it comes to just saying things.
Well, but you have to build in the context of his larger rhetoric and narrative. And so everything he says builds on that.
I get it.
That's all.
I'm just saying there's a small section of people that consider themselves liberals that get upset over everything.
Okay.
It does happen.
Yes, I know.
So I can see that. But when it comes to the right, like, there is no Democrat that I know that believes something fucking crazy.
Right. All the conspiracy theories and everything always comes from the right.
There is nothing. What is it that Trump will declare martial law? Fine, I can understand in hindsight why we'd be like, okay, that was fucking stupid, but it's not outrageous. It's not insane to think that. It is insane to think that Trump and Biden swapped fucking faces. That is insane.
And that's what's so concerning to me about the poll that I found.
Yeah,
because
good segue.
It was, and I don't know how many of, even within this group of people that were included in this poll, how many would believe something like that extreme. It makes you wonder at what point do people sort of jump ship. But this poll from December, so this was before.
This is from NPR, right?
Yes, and it was before the insurrection and before the inauguration. So you can imagine the numbers may have changed since then. But 17% of adults believed, and they didn't say, do you believe in QAnon? They gave the belief and asked if people believed this. And the belief was that a group of Satan-worshipping elites who run a child sex ring are trying to control our politics and media. 17%.
Did they tell you how many people participated in the poll?
No.
Okay.
But it gives you just the percentage. And 37% said they didn't know. So they were like open to it.
So that's what, 44% total?
It's over 50% total.
50% total, yes. 54%.
54% either believed it or were open to the idea or didn't know, were unsure about it. Like, again, I don't know how many people were in this poll, if it's accurate in terms of extrapolating to the entire population. There's always issues with polls, but
I can sympathize more with the 34% than the 17%. And it's because shit is constantly uncovered when it comes to politicians. I'm sure you can dig through. No. I get that. I'm saying I'm sure you can dig through history and find out a member of Congress, and there are a bunch of members of Congress, right, that had been caught with child porn.
Oh, sure. There's been scandals. There's been crime.
That's what I'm saying. So maybe that's the thinking. I can't dismiss it. Maybe the Satan worshiping thing is a little much, but just in terms of, child molestation or child porn, being into kiddie porn, even I won't dismiss that there's a possibility that there's one member of Congress today that isn't subject to that. I won't dismiss it.
Sure, but this is bigger. This is a group of Satan-worshipping elites that are controlling our politics and media and run a child sex ring. That's a new extreme of scandal, if you would even call that a scandal. I mean...
But to me, and maybe this is me falling victim to it, out of all the possibilities of that, right? So you said three things. We'll break them down. Satan-worshipping, child sex trafficking ring, molest kids. Right. Well, because in order to run a child sex trafficking, we'll just have those two.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. Child sex trafficking ring, Satan worshiping. The least crazy of those two is the child sex trafficking ring.
Sure, because it happens.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Sex trafficking is a thing.
So I can't dismiss that as a possibility. I'm just being...
So I think I was kind of with you that I'm like, maybe when people were presented with this, if they don't know what QAnon is and they just heard this statement, they'd be like so confused, be like, I don't know. Like
I can't dismiss that there's a member of Congress is that fucked up.
I'm hoping that maybe these people who were unsure just didn't understand the...
Or isn't like, I don't know, man.
Right. I think maybe they just didn't understand the implication of what they were saying. Like, this is such a large, basically it's taking over our government versus one member of Congress who might have been who might end up getting caught with child porn or something.
Would that shock you? If there was a member of Congress that got nailed for running a child sex trafficking ring, would you be shocked?
Yes.
I would not.
Okay, there's a difference between, you keep going back and forth between they watch kiddie porn and
No, I'm saying a member of Congress is
running a sex trafficking ring for children.
That would not shock me.
I would be shocked.
I would be more shocked if one of them was a satanic person.
I
I'd be way more shocked if I found out that
guess.
some member of Congress, given the climate of the world, given that fucking Jared of Subway who was a child sex trafficker, and banged kids. That's more shocking to me than a member of Congress, because at least a member of Congress has power. Jared was supposed to be this wholesome guy that used to be fat and is not fat and shelling out, Subway sandwiches.
I guess.
You know what I'm
I
saying?
just think, but also they're yes, they have power, but they're also in a position of being scrutinized.
Yes.
So it's.
I'm not saying there is. I'm saying I wouldn't be like, this is so fucking. Ugh.
Well, because it's something that does happen
That's
in
what I'm
reality.
saying.
Yes, I know. Satan is not a
Satan
thing.
worshipers in Congress. I'd be like, wow.
Yeah.
I
guess.
thought you were a Christian.
Right.
I'd be more shocked. No, I shouldn't say that, because I bet you there are a bunch of atheists in Congress that just don't want to admit that they're atheists because it
I'm
would
sure
hurt
they
their
are.
voting chances.
Yeah.
But yes, that would a child. I know this is weird, but and maybe this makes me a QAnon, but of those two things, even if it's a slight percentage more, I can kind of see that.
I guess.
More than
But it was concerning to me that over half of the people in this poll either believed the QAnon core theory
I don't believe
or
it.
were open to it in some sense, or just weren't sure about it. And it's just it speaks to how unraveled our information system has come, that people might hear things here and there, and that's what plants those seeds of doubt. Even if you're not someone who buys into it, you're not part of QAnon, but you're someone who kind of stays on the periphery of things and isn't really involved in the conversation and doesn't follow politics and everything too closely, but you hear these things or you see them on social media just kind of in passing, that plants that seed where you can't even dismiss something this crazy just right off the bat.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, when you, and we'll tie it into Marjorie Taylor Greene. When you have someone that, so in high school, I was a sophomore in high school when 9/11 happened, right? And so I'm not the most informed person at that time. I'm about 14, 15 years old, and talking philosophy at parties was cool. Oh, does God exist? Oh, I'm so cool. And being like, I don't know about that whole 9/11 thing.
Well, you talked about loose change.
Yeah. And when I was from the age range of 14, I'll give myself to 20, that 6-year period. If I'm, entertaining that, it's dumb in hindsight, but I can always go back to, I was a fucking kid. I didn't know any better. I wasn't educated enough. I didn't know what. It just, you gravitate towards conspiracy theories because in your young adolescent mind, it's
interesting.
It's compelling, right?
Yeah.
And it makes you the cool guy at the party.
Again,
that guy's smart over there.
Just I think most QAnon followers, they know something that other people don't.
Yeah,
that's the appeal.
But the difference is as an adult, people want to get away from you.
Right.
And in high school, people are like, that he knows things.
Yeah.
Right? And you want to be that guy. Anyways, my point is when you're an adult and you're chasing around survivors of school shootings, calling them out, and basically dismissing their trauma as legitimate, and being part of a false flag or part of some grand theater show to curb gun control or whatever, and 9/11 being an inside job, or inciting riots in their own implicit ways, that is not something that anybody should want in Congress,
right?
Other than those that also have those beliefs.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, that's why, there was just the move made to remove her from her committees. I think there were 2 committees that she sat on.
Education committee was one.
Yeah. And I don't remember what the other one was.
I'd rather have Betsy Davos or whatever her name was.
She's gone too, but...
No, I know. I'm just saying in comparison.
She was the secretary.
Yeah, whatever.
But,
you know what I mean.
Yeah. I guess I don't know enough about the politics of it, but there's some discussion of whether or not this is a smart move for Democrats, because it can set a precedent for if Congress flips in a couple of years or in 4 years or whatever, that this could happen the other way around.
How?
if, again, I don't know enough about the details, but if the Republicans had the votes to remove certain Democrats from committees, they won't hesitate because we did it.
Based on what, though?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying.
You got to
I
judge
know.
people on the merits. You
I
can't
agree.
judge people just on their apologies or whatever. You got to judge them on the merits. And right now, the merits are she has believed some batshit crazy shit. And I'm going back to the insurrection. There are people that were stupid enough to be filmed, to take pictures of themselves and whatnot. She is stupid enough not to hire someone good. And this is professionally, okay? And I don't agree with this, but there are companies that will fucking wipe your social media squeaky clean so you look clean as a whistle when you're running for Congress. She should have fucking did that.
But here's the thing. We just went over that poll where more than half the population is apparently open to this idea and her ideas. So she, being the way she is and spouting the bullshit that she believes, helped her get elected. So why would she go back and wipe her social media clean? She thinks she's making the politically correct move, which is obvious by the fact that she was elected. Although, of course, you have to take into account the issues with our election system and gerrymandering, and I don't know how all of that played into her specific case, but yeah, it's possible that it didn't truly represent her constituents, but because of voter suppression and things like that.
Is it fucked up to think that I assumed that there's voter suppression just because she has a southern twang?
No, it's
That's what I'm
accurate.
saying, you know?
It's accurate to assume there is voter suppression everywhere in the country.
No, I know, but when I see a white woman being elected into Congress
From the South?
yeah, I just
Yes.
assume
Yeah. No, that's accurate.
that was elected from the right, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how a lot of Republicans get into office.
I don't know. I just think that it's crazy. And she just had a press conference. You and I were watching it on Friday. She did say that she apologizes for her remarks. And
Which ones?
The remarks about the false flag, about, you know, the school shooting being a staged hoax. She didn't get into detail, but I know this is, I don't believe her. I'll say that, but what else can we base it on? She says, I'm sorry for the things I've said, right? And that's more than what Trump has ever done.
Sure.
Ever.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm not excusing her. I'm not saying we should trust her. I'm not saying we should give her throw her back into the committee or whatever. I'm not saying that. All that was, I think, the right call. I'm saying right now we have no choice but to take her at her word and judge her movements and to judge her actions from this point on. We have no choice.
Right.
Because if this was someone on the left that apologized, we would say he apologized.
Yeah, but the apology, she has to put her money where her mouth is. I mean, she has
That's what I'm saying. We have to judge her actions
right. If
moving
she's
forward.
continuing, I mean, I don't know the details of what she denounced and what she apologized for. I
think it was just a blanket apology.
right. That's what to me. That's not enough. Like, you need to admit that your rhetoric, that you've contributed to violence, to people being murdered, like including. This is one thing that blows my mind, the amount of silence I've seen from some of the conservative people that I follow on social media who were not shy about condemning a lot of the Black Lives Matter protests and things, and talking about the looting and the riots and the fires and all that bullshit. Not one mention of the police officer who was beat to death at the insurrection. It's unless that level of violence and wrongdoing is acknowledged flat out by people like her, then her apology means nothing.
No, I agree. We have to judge her from her actions moving forward. You know, and I'm not expecting her to now turn liberal. I'm not saying that.
No,
I
but
expect
denounce
the same,
you have to denounce the rhetoric that led us to where we are.
or at the very least say something to the lines outwardly saying QAnon is bullshit.
Yes, that's what I mean. Completely denounce it.
Yes.
Say this was not the right path to go down. This is not where we should be as a country. This level, bringing violence to our nation's capital and our lawmakers and our police officers, that is not okay. That is not part of, I don't even know what else to say about it. It makes me really mad.
I understand. And look, at this point, all we can do, like I said, is judge her moving forward. And I don't know. To me, it's I think there's a difference of getting, riling up your local electorates, right? So you have people in your community, and that's probably largely what she was, feeding off of when she got voted in. There was probably this nice little power surge within her among the people, her like-minded people in her region. But when you go into that chamber, it's a whole different fucking episode.
Yeah,
right?
but...
And hold on, I'm being
Okay.
serious. OAC is finding this out, even though I do think she is, powerful in her own right, and she has a very long reach to people. At the end of the day, right now, at this moment, this is probably going to change, but she still sort of has to bend the knee and kiss the ring of Pelosi. She has to.
AOC?
Yes.
Yeah.
You have to.
Well,
and so at the end of the day, Marjorie Taylor Greene has to bend the knee and kiss the ring of Mitch.
Yeah,
and
I think
Mitch has already said this is bullshit.
Right. And I think what you're describing, maybe it's different because this is a very extreme example when we're talking about conspiracy theories and things. But to play devil's advocate, I mean, it's the job of our elected representatives to represent their constituents. So if Green comes from, Taylor Greene comes from a community that largely shares these beliefs and they're rallying. But here's the thing, they're not rallying for a policy. They're not rallying for something that they believe
like
in.
Smaller government or
Right. They're pushing conspiracies and promoting
I don't
violence.
Know that. I don't know that.
Her rhetoric does. That's what
I know, but I don't know that the voters there
I
are
know.
also
I'm going on
buying
this assumption because you just kind of laid that out that maybe she thinks she's doing what she's elected to do.
Right.
Because it's representing her constituents, which is true. The representatives are supposed to represent their constituents, just like AOC represents her constituents. And if she seems like she's extreme on something or doesn't want to budge on something, it's because she's trying to be true to the people who elected her. But I think at some point, all of our politicians have to compromise or, reach across the aisle. There's that whole narrative of, yes, you need to represent your constituents. You need to stick with your beliefs and try to keep to your promises. But the only way to realistically get things done in the political system that we have is to make compromises.
I also think that when you have someone like Mitch McConnell, and I'm not one to give him a lot of credit at all, but I'm just saying the one thing that I will give credit to is I do think he's trying to move the Republican Party away from Trump. This whole Trumpism mentality. I think he's recognized that, what makes him vile is that he ignored the Trumpism thing and used Trump as a vehicle to get what traditional Republicans would want to get done during those 4 years.
Yeah.
Right. And, I think in that regard, you made your bed in this. You should have never allowed this to happen, quote unquote, even though he didn't vote him in. There was nothing he could do. It was people voting for Trump anyway. But at this point, if he's denouncing, if Mitch McConnell is that old white dude that has these core conservative values, I highly disagree with that. But I would much rather that than Trumpism and QAnon.
Yes.
In Congress.
Yes.
Because I do think even though our system has not been successful in curbing and correcting those things, I do feel like we're on the right path to do that in terms of, millennials being more aware of things and becoming the majority of people in the country. And the generation that follows us sort of has that same mentality in terms of ethics and whatnot.
And the spotlight that's been put on voter suppression and involvement in our
the
political
only
system
people really to ignore that largely are older people. Like people in our generation and younger are aware of those things and would like those things fixed.
Yeah.
They probably don't know how, and they're probably just flying in the seat of their pants. But by and large, older people are like, I don't give a fuck.
Unless you're one of the people who thinks that voter fraud is a bigger problem than voter suppression.
Older people or uneducated people, largely.
Yeah. Okay.
Largely. My point is when you have someone like Mitch McConnell, still the head honcho of the Republican Party, at least in Congress, Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to have to get in line. And I think that's the message that was sent You like,
By removing her from the committees, you mean?
I mean, that was what was set by Democrats.
Right.
But I think when you have Mitch McConnell saying outward, this is Looney Tune shit, that's a whisper to Marjorie Taylor Greene, get the fucking line.
Yeah.
Or I will ruin you.
I mean, I hope that it has that effect. I think it's a little too little too late.
But this is,
from
if
Mitch,
you've noticed,
but
you don't have a lot of Republicans in Congress
yeah, but it's
that are outwardly supporting QAnon. Just because you
Yeah.
support election fraud does not mean you support QAnon.
yeah, but it reinforces it because it's such a
I get
central
it.
theme of the conspiracy theory.
Totally get it. But you can have questions on voter fraud. You can have concerns and believe, I don't know, I think there's something fucked up about, and I'm not saying this is the correct thing, but it doesn't strike me as, oh, you must be a QAnon if you have concerns or doubts about the elections. That doesn't
right.
automatically
You could buy
make you a
into
QAnon.
like Ted Cruz is probably not.
He might be.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
But
I shouldn't say.
but if he
very well
wasn't,
could be. It wouldn't shock me.
but if he's not, I'd say, okay, you just are misinformed about
right,
the
because
election.
what I'm getting at is he might not believe in the satanic.
It's easy to get down that rabbit hole as a result, starting off with election fraud. It's easy to get sucked into QAnon if you
Right,
believe.
But it
in-
happened in the opposite direction. The whole satanic
yes,
pedophile
yes,
ring
was first.
theory
Yes.
and Pizzagate and all that stuff happened years ago, and the election fraud just happened in the last few months. So to say that could be the entryway to QAnon, I think is kind of
I think
backwards.
QAnon has a bunch of entryways.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, you can essential oils. You'll end up being a QAnon. You know,
yeah.
you'll end up there.
Well, the themes of the cult run through. We talked about it with MLMs,
Like you can be an anti-vaxxer and not a QAnon.
of course.
Okay, so
But
you can
the
doubt
overlap,
election.
I agree
Yes,
with you. Yes, but there's a lot of overlap there.
of course.
Yeah.
I get it.
I'm just saying it's dangerous because the QAnon community holds the election fraud belief so tightly as such a strong, important part of their belief system now that when someone like Ted Cruz doubles down on that and backs them up, essentially, even though it's just this one component of their beliefs, it just gives them more fuel.
I get it. But my point is, if there are other members of Congress that buy into QAnon, you're not hearing it.
Yeah.
Right? And it's because I believe Mitch McConnell is saying, fall the fucking line. And if you don't, I'll ruin you. Right? And I don't think he's upset that Marjorie Taylor Greene got removed
I don't
from
think so
committee.
either.
I don't think he cares.
No.
But I do think, on the one hand, he's thinking, okay, well, this is good to have in my back pocket. But on the other hand, he's thinking, that is not representative of my party.
Right.
You know, I'll fall with Trump. This is him.
This was finally the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because at least
I
QAnon
chuckle
doesn't get
because
QAnon doesn't act as a vehicle for Republicans to get shit done.
I know.
Trump does.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So if anything,
Well, he
QAnon,
did.
yes. If anything, QAnon halts that because there's just chaos.
Right. There's
There's
no
no
actual
order.
direction. There's no tasks that can actually be completed in reality.
Yes. Whereas Trump, the whole goal is just get richer. Right. And
Benefit-
smaller
yeah.
government and whatnot. I believe Trump is attracted to that because if
it benefits wealthy people.
Exactly. Right. And so that's a vehicle for the Republican Party, whereas QAnon doesn't do anything
I hope you're right.
other than incite voters to want to vote for you. That's it. It's the only thing. There's no policy.
Yeah.
There's no substances. There's no meat. It's just
Well,
tears now.
I hope that I don't know. I hope that it starts to peter out. I just, knowing what little I know about cults and what we talked about moving the goalposts and how they'll just change the narrative and mold the beliefs to suit what's
probably.
currently happening is just scary. I
Yeah.
mean, even like you hear the language that's used is like, I remember when we were watching that Heaven's Gate documentary, they specifically pointed this out, and I immediately thought of the one person I follow that is a QAnoner. I always say that QAnon,
Just a QAnon. Yeah. or an anon.
Anon.
That's just difficult for me
Yeah,
to
it's
say.
that it's a telltale sign of when people are in a cult that they mimic their leaders, like
Rhetoric and
like
mannerisms,
terminology,
yeah.
the vocabulary, the manner, the way they say it. They were talking about when the leader of the Heaven's Gate cult was talking about
And
his
crying
previous
and-
co-leader, whatever. And he teared up every time, and every single time they interviewed a member of the cult, they had the exact same reaction when they brought up that person, because that's how he presented himself when talking about that subject. And I see it exactly the same thing happening. Like, people say the term
The likes you'll never
the likes
see.
you've never seen
Yeah.
before, and the storm, and it's I hope it's on its way out, but I don't know what to think anymore.
We'll see. To me, there's hope because, it's all about a recency bias, right? And, once $1,400 goes into people's pockets, right? And not to say that there aren't people that legitimately need that. I do
course
think
there are.
Yes. And, if minimum wage goes up and if,
Student loans are
healthcare-
forgiven.
Yeah, healthcare is more accessible to people and it's cheaper. I mean, these are the goals, right? I can only base it on what Biden wants to do or says he wants to do. I can't, judge otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And it, again, on the small scale, if pot is legal federally, like at that point, you'll go one of two ways. You'll either say, this is the devil is, wants to give you all this shit to make you, ignore what's going on, right? And that's a classic trope when it comes
Like it's
to
a sin of
no,
indulgence,
like,
or
he's distracting you with
Yeah.
all this stuff, right? And so at that point, fine, don't smoke pot, don't use the healthcare, and give back your $1,400 and don't have a job because you'll have a high minimum wage, hopefully,
Mm-hmm.
which you won't. Or this is legitimate shit, and he's made the lives of people better if it happens, right? And I don't think legalizing pot makes things worse. I think it does make things better. I think it does make it less likely that we're going to have people that don't belong in prison.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's how can you not be okay with any of that? You can say pot's not for me and, I don't like getting high, but by and large, it's almost impossible to OD and people don't die from it.
Right.
Typically, compared to drunk driving, So at that point, I think what will happen is if all these things occur and are successful, people will say, I kind of like this.
Maybe it wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
It's not the end of our government.
Kind of like it, or you'll have those people that are like, I like it, but he's still raping kids.
Oh yeah, they'll find something to dislike.
Whatever. Let's wrap it up unless you have
Yeah.
anything else to say.
Nope.
Okay. Well, maybe there'll be a part 3, depending on
I
what
have a
happens.
feeling there might be more
Depending on what happens.
after
It's-
March 6th, right?
Yeah,
the,
we'll
the real
see.
inauguration day
When nothing happens, we'll have an episode on nothing.
when Trump comes out, but with Biden's face.
Yeah. We'll see. Well, no, that's now.
Oh, they've already done the switch.
It's already
Wow.
happened. The switch is on. Yeah.
Medical marvel.
Anyways. Well, they did it in Face Off.
Yeah,
John Travolta took his face off and put it. They did
I
it.
know.
They weren't acting as different characters. That doesn't happen.
Right.
Next week, seeing as though it's Valentine's Day next Sunday, I would like to do something love related. We already did an episode on So You Want to Get Married. We don't have to get too much into the weaves when it comes to personal details, but maybe we can rip off Chris and Sarah and do a love languages episode or something.
Yeah, that'd be
It
fun.
won't be as good as theirs,
Of course not.
but
The OG.
yeah, we'll see. We're ripping you guys off. Anyways, thank you for listening if you made it this far. If you have any thoughts on QAnon or if you have any personal stories with someone that you know, maybe a family member, a neighbor, a coworker, whatever, that buys into it, if they still do, I would really like to know what their thinking is. I'm more interested in hearing stories of people that left. So if you know
Or
anybody,
just doubting, or
yeah,
or at least open to the conversation.
jumped off the train, please contact us. You can do so by
You can visit our Facebook at facebook.com/whileshe'snapping. We're on Instagram at whileshe'snapping, or on Twitter at she'snappingpod, or you can send us an email at whileshe'snapping@gmail.com.
Yeah, hit us up. Again, we're on all your favorite podcatchers. If you are listening to us on Apple Podcasts, please take the opportunity to give us 5 stars and a quick review. Helps us out a lot. Not really. It just makes us look good. That's what I mean by helping us out a lot. If you have any, Valentine's Day stories that you want to share with us, we can include them in next week's episode. Maybe we can talk about, we'll do half love languages and we can do the other half favorite Valentine's Day gifts or something stupid. I don't know. We'll see.
I'll
give
think
you a
of
foot
something.
rub or something.
Okay.
Maybe.
No, it's on the recording. You're committed.
You can give me a foot rub.
Okay.
But not my foot.
Gotcha.
Anyways. Take care, everyone.
Bye.